All right, it's 7 o'clock. We've got a few people coming in, but I'm going to go ahead and get started and start talking about the program today. So thank you for joining us. This is Tough Plants for North Texas. And this is the third part of a three-part class series about trees, bushes, and vines that are perfect for North Texas lawns. And before I introduce our speaker and she starts talking about the subject today, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Tarrant Regional Water District. TRWD is supporting this presentation, and Tarrant Regional Water District maintains 4 area lakes and all of the pipelines and infrastructure that is needed to supply surface water to local water treatment plants. Those water treatment plants treat the water to drinking water standards, and then that water is provided to our communities. TRWD also works with all the cities within Tarrant County to provide water conservation programs to the community, and that's what you're seeing here today. The reason why we do that is because conservation is an important water supply strategy to meet the needs of a growing population here in Tarrant County. And so if you go to tarrantwater.com, savetarrantwater.com, you can sign up for several different programs that we offer in conjunction with that. If you're a Tarrant County resident, you can sign up for a free sprinkler evaluation where a licensed irrigator will come to your house, take a look at your sprinkler system and let you know if it needs any maintenance and how you can potentially reduce some of your water waste. You can also sign up for free weekly watering advice that you can either get emailed or texted to you every Monday that will let you know how much you should water your lawn for that week, depending on the weather. There's also a calendar of classes and events there, just like this one, that are happening in the future, and you can find water-saving tips and videos. You can also find the videos there for the past 2 parts of this live virtual event. Tarrant Regional Water District also partners with other organizations such as the Tarrant County Master Gardeners and Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service to offer you educational programming just like this one that pertains to outdoor water conservation and gardening. So now that I've told you a little bit about TRWD, I'm going to talk about Tony and go ahead and introduce our program today. Our speaker is Tony Moorhead, and she is a Tarrant County Master Gardener, and she also owns her own landscaping business. And so today she's going to be talking to you about the best trees, bushes, and vines for North Texas. And if you have any questions throughout, you can type them into the question and answer box, and we'll get to some questions at the end of the program. So now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Tony and let her begin.
All right. Let me share my screen. Okay, I hope everybody can see. All right, thank you for joining us for the third installment of this series. So today we're going to talk about trees and shrubs and vines, and I've thrown in a couple little bonus topics of grasses and ground covers, so we'll cover those as well. So again, just want to remind y'all about native and adapted plants. Native plants have been here since forever, and they can handle just about anything that our Texas weather dishes out. And adapted plants, they're not native to Texas, but they originate from areas that have similar soil types, which just means crummy. And their climate is similar, which means, you know, one day it's 80 and the next day it's 20, and one day we have a tornado and the next day we have a drought. And so, you know, Texas. And then also they're adapted to a similar hardiness zone. So, and the reason we choose native and adapted plants are the same reasons I had mentioned before: drought tolerance, heat tolerance, water efficiency, and fertilizer and pesticide lower requirements on those. So today, again, we're going to talk about trees. I'm going to start with shade and then go into ornamental trees, and then we'll move into shrubs and the other topics. So if you are not a native, if you grew up north and you are just in need of beautiful fall color, if you miss that, then this is your tree. Chinese pistache is an excellent shade tree for Texas, and it's grows about 40 feet tall and wide, but it has beautiful, beautiful fall color, as you can see in this picture here, and just an excellent, excellent tree for our area. And then Shumard red oak is another great tree for our area. You can see it has a beautiful red fall color. This is actually a small tree pictured here because this tree will grow approximately 80 feet tall and maybe not quite that wide, but it's a very large shade tree. One thing I want to note is it does not like wet feet, so make sure you plant this in an area with really good drainage. So a chinkapin oak will have just about the same shape as a shoemard red oak, but the leaf shape is very different than, if I go back here, you can see the lobed leaves of the shoemard, and the chinkapin has just a very different leaf shape, but about the same size. Very good tree for our area. Now, this tree is not a good tree for our area. If you drive down the street and you see the dark green leaves of a shoemard red oak, and then you see a limey colored tree next to it, this is a pin oak, and they need acidic soil. So think Tyler, Texas. So this tree is in severe iron deficient state. So you can see the leaves up close. Whenever you have a leaf that is yellowing with dark green veining, that is telling you that it's very iron deficient. So these trees will just never be healthy in our area of alkaline soil. So when you are picking out a red oak, be sure that you're getting a true shoemard red oak and not a pin oak, because it can be very tricky on that. Sometimes they're a hybrid and they end up being more pin than shoemard or red. So anyway, then you have this trouble. So here's a live oak. We're all familiar with those very large trees. I'm always baffled why the developers are putting these huge trees, 2 of them usually, in postage stamp front yards. But anyway, if you grow this tree, make sure you give it lots of room. This is a great fall color tree as well, and it's a smaller tree for that would fit great on that postage stamp yard. This is a shantung maple. The regular variety has yellow fall color, and the fire dragon variety has red fall color. Here's the yellow. But they grow about 30 to 35 feet tall and wide at maturity. So just a great maple for our area. And this is a full sun maple. It's a Chinese maple, not a Japanese, so it can handle full sun. Ginkgo, Ginkgo biloba, this is a great tree as well. It'll grow about 40 feet tall, maybe 30 feet wide, so a little bit smaller as compared to an oak. And then you can see the fan-shaped leaf there, and then it gets beautiful yellow fall color. And the cool thing about this tree is it drops all of its leaves in one day. And you will only be able to find the male variety of this tree in the nursery industry. The female has very stinky fruit, so they don't even sell it in the industry. Cedar elm, that's a great tree for our area too, has really tiny leaves, turns yellow in the fall. It can reseed a little bit, as all elms can, but this is it's a much better elm for our area. You will also see lacebark elm that has very cool patterned bark to it. So that's a great tree as well. These trees here I'm not recommending: American elm, Bradford pear, and sugar maple. They're just not, they do grow in our area. The sugar maple, not so much, but the Bradford pear, you will see that a lot. It's got beautiful blooms in the springtime and beautiful fall color, but at about 15 years, they, because of their narrow branching structure, they usually split in half and, you know, can potentially cause damage to your home or a vehicle or you. So don't recommend that tree anymore. We used to see those maybe 30 years ago being planted prolifically, but I think not as much anymore. But American elm, you'll see that around some, but and I have one in my yard. It was here. I wouldn't plant one if I had the choice, but I do like it because it allows me to have lots of shade for my Japanese maples. All right, so this is Eastern red cedar. I guess you could put this in the large shrub or a tree category. It'll grow about 30 feet tall and wide. It is evergreen. So this is a tough tree for our area. It can get some fungal problems, and it can get bagworms, so you might want to be on the lookout for that. But if you need a large screening shrub, this would work. And then Yopon holly is, we're moving kind of into the ornamental trees. This could also be a large shrub as well. And lots of times I see Yopon hollies pruned into these mushroom shapes. But I would like to encourage you to stop doing that because it's high maintenance, and then just limit up from the bottom and allow the top to grow out. And within 3 years, the tree will grow out of that mushroom form into a really nice ornamental tree that you can actually see out your windows again and plant something underneath of it. And then Yopon hollies get these beautiful red berries on it in the fall. And there's also a weeping form of this ornamental tree. And then there's possum haw holly that it looks just like the Yopon holly, but it loses its leaves in the wintertime, whereas Yopon is evergreen, possum haw is deciduous. So it loses its leaves but retains the berries in the wintertime. So this is a really fun tree to watch the cedar waxwings when they come in late January and February, and they will just clean these berries off. It's really fun to watch that bird. All right, Vitex this can also be treated as a large shrub or as an ornamental tree. We call this Texas lilac. As a matter of fact, I was talking to my niece today in Wisconsin, and she wanted to plant a lilac, and I said, I can't really tell you a lot about them because we can't grow them down here, but we can grow Vitex that gives you a similar look. They don't have the fragrance of a lilac, but they do have the beautiful purple blooms that will attract pollinators like crazy. But this is a very large, if you leave it as a shrub or a tree, it's going to be 15 feet tall and wide, so very large. Give it some room. All right, Mexican plum is a great substitute for that Bradford pear that I suggested not to plant. So this is about 25 feet at maturity, beautiful white fragrant blooms in the springtime. The bees absolutely love the blooms of this plant, and beautiful red fall color on this tree as well. So just a nice small native ornamental tree. And then red buds, I think we all know about red buds, nice little ornamental trees as well with the beautiful red or magenta blooms on it in the springtime. There's also a variety called burgundy hearts and forest pansy that have the burgundy leaves. And then there's one called Rising Sun and another one called Hearts of Gold that have these lime green leaves. So all of these trees will get about, 20-foot range. The tag on the Rising Sun says it only grows 8 to 12, but I can assure you it grows 20 feet tall. All right, there's also a weeping form of red bud called Ruby Falls, so check that one out. And here's Catalpa. It's a cross between a catalpa tree and a desert willow. So it's got blooms like a catalpa, but it's got foliage like the desert willow. So a nice small tree, very drought tolerant, very narrow leaves on it like the desert willow, but interesting little plant or tree. Japanese maples. Now these are shade loving maples, whereas the shantung was a sun loving. These have to have shade. And they're not a xeric plant. You're not going to plant these with no supplemental water, but I don't give them any extra water beyond what I follow the city requirements of twice a week in the middle of the summer. I am supplementing, but nothing beyond that, and they do just fine for me. They don't need any special soil prep or anything in our area. All right, crepe myrtles, of course, we're all familiar with crepe myrtles, and remember there are crepe myrtles that grow 3 feet tall and 30 feet tall and everything in between. So be sure to plant accordingly. Remember that first segment we talked about the right plant in the right place, so be sure to put the size that you want in the place that you want, because we don't want to commit crepe murder. So we want to stop the chop. All right, and if you have a tree, a crepe myrtle that has been murdered in the past, there is a fix for it. Or also there are some varieties that tend to sustain freeze damage, like Tuscarora is one that I know has had lots of freeze damage. You can actually cut the crepe myrtle to the ground, and it will send up, like this picture shows, it will send up a whole bunch of new stems. And what you'll do is pick about half of those stems, the strongest ones, and cut the other ones away. And then the next year you'll cut another half away, and you want to end up with somewhere 3, 5, 7 stems. And within a year, you're going to have a really nice new little tree. And then every year after that, just cut any suckers off at the bottom, but don't cut the top, and let it grow out naturally. Okay, if you see these white insects on your crepe myrtle, this is scale. It's an insect, not a fungus. So what happens is the scale excretes honeydew, and that honeydew is sticky, and the mold grows in that honeydew, and it's called sooty mold. So then you get the black that is a fungus, but it's caused by the excrement of the scale. So Texas A&M recommends treating with imidacloprid, and this is a big old bad chemical, so please read the directions and use it according to the directions. Don't just spread it all over your yard. Use it very judiciously just to treat crepe myrtles that have very, very bad infestation of scale. But I want to encourage you, if you see this on your crepe myrtle, these are the pupal cases of the twice-stabbed lady beetle, and the larva of this lady beetle will clean this tree up. I have seen it. It's amazing. So don't treat with imidacloprid if you see this ladybug on your crepe myrtles, because you'll kill her too. So let nature take its course in that case and let her do the cleaning. So, all right, let's move into shrubs. Nellie R. Stevens is one of the best large screening shrubs that we have for our area. The picture on the left shows one that has never been pruned, and it is more than half the height of that light pole, which is probably 30 feet tall. So this plant will get over 15 feet tall and 10 feet wide if you just let it grow naturally. The picture on the right you can show has been manicured, and then you can also use this as like a patio tree where it's been limbed up to expose the trunks, and then you can just let the top grow out naturally. But it's an excellent, excellent shrub. This is Oakland holly. They say if you want a pyramidal shaped holly that you never have to prune, get this one. It is very slow growing and needs very little pruning, but it will grow about 12 feet tall and 8 feet wide. So site it again accordingly if you don't want to have to prune it. Dwarf Yaupon holly. I love this little shrub. I use this instead of boxwood. This is a native shrub to our area. It is tough as nails. It handles shearing very well if you want to keep it tightly manicured. I cut mine in a dome shape every February. I don't cut in at the bottom. I just cut it in the shape of a dome or an umbrella. I prune it hard every February, and then I give it a little tidy up prune in about October, and that's all I do to this shrub. Burford Holly is another great foundation plant. It will grow about, well, you can easily keep it at 3 by 3 feet tall and wide, or 4 by 4. I prune it hard every February again to keep it very compact and thick growing. I like to prune it in natural shape as opposed to hedging with a square shape. Carissa holly is another excellent holly for our area, and needlepoint holly is excellent as well. Needlepoint and Burford look almost exactly the same, but needlepoint grows quite a bit bigger. One thing I do want to mention though is there was an air conditioner repairman in one of my talks that I gave, and he was saying, please don't plant hollies next to the air conditioner units. So, because when they get in there to work on them, they don't like getting all scratched up by the hollies. So just a note of caution on that. All right, Nandinas. I love Nandinas. They are, to me, just indispensable in the landscape because they can handle very shady conditions and full sun, and they give you beautiful foliage color in the winter time when they get the winter sun. This particular variety here is Gulfstream, but there's also Obsession and Lemon Lime that grow in this size right here, so it only grows about 2 feet tall and wide, and this is a non-spreading variety. Then there's also Nana or Firepower. There's a new variety called Blush that's a little bit smaller, even does not spread. There's a variety Flirt and Harbor Dwarf and Harbor Belle, and they are more of a ground cover type, so they do spread, but they're all excellent for our area. I want to encourage you not to hedge your Nandinas. They are pruned by cutting 1/3 of the tallest canes to the ground every February, and that will keep the growth coming from the bottom of the plant, and it will stay bushier, more compact. And these are my Nandinas that are 21 years old, and I prune them once a year, and they just keep in that natural shape like that. Very easy. Abelias, I love abelias. I was talking last week when someone had the question about what to replace roses with, so I suggested replacing with abelias, and there are so many different varieties of abelias here. I've named 4 of them. There's also Edward Goucher, there's Twist of Orange, Radiance, Mardi Gras, Sherwood, Glossy, and I know I'm leaving out a bunch more. Some of them grow 6 to 8 feet tall and wide, and some, like Kaleidoscope, will grow about 3 feet tall, 4 feet wide. So there is an abelia for every spot. And they are fragrant, and they attract pollinators like crazy. They do have a little more of a wild, free-form growth habit, which I like about them. And so I always tell people, trying to keep an abelia manicured is like me having straight hair. It lasts one day and then it's back to craziness. So just let it grow into its natural form and you will be happy with this plant. Here is a picture of my Rose Creek abelia. It is just laden with those fragrant white blooms all summer long. So I just love this plant, and it stays nice and compact. I do prune it every February pretty hard, but then that just lets it grow back out into this natural shape. All right, spireas, lots of different spireas as well. Bridal wreath is an early bloomer, usually about March time frame, and it gets these beautiful white blooms on. It's a very large shrub, about 6 feet. So again, planted at the right spot. And then there's some smaller varieties, Anthony Water, Lime Mound, Gold Mound. They will be blooming in about the May time frame with those light pink blooms on them. Rose of Sharon, again, can be either trained as a small tree or it can be a large shrub. So lots of different varieties. There's a new series out called the Smoothie series. So there's blueberry smoothie, raspberry smoothie, strawberry smoothie, and they even had one called fruit smoothie where they took 3 different types and put them all together in one container. So you have 3 different color blooms on. I thought that was clever. But here it's showing, this is a variety called Aphrodite, and I've left it as a large shrub form. So it's starting to bloom prolifically right now, and it will bloom for a couple months. All right, Cenizo or Texas sage. They call this shrub the barometer bush because it usually blooms in response to a rain. So this is what it looks like here, where it's not in blooms, just a large gray shrub. This plant, put it where it gets very hot, dry, sunny conditions. The prettiest one I think I've ever seen was in the middle of the median on 157 down near Highway 183. Planted in gravel, surrounded by hot reflective concrete, and it was blooming its head off. Where I see that it does not look good is when it's planted in landscapes where it's getting supplemental water and too much shade, and then it just looks scraggly and doesn't do this plant justice. So put it in hot, dry conditions and you'll be happy with it. And speaking of shade, we're going to move into some shrubs that like shadier conditions. This is Mahonia, a variety called leatherleaf. So it is a little prickly, but it's great for the background where you need a taller shrub that can handle full shade. So this plant will get about somewhere between 4 and 6 feet tall. Kind of slow growing, but it gets the yellow blooms on it in the wintertime, and it's followed up by these bluish purple berries. There's another variety called Soft Caress. I haven't found this one to be as cold hardy here as I had hoped it to be. It's supposed to be zone 7, but I've lost it. It's frozen to the ground for me. So if you're in a little bit warmer zone, maybe if you're watching from a zone 9, this plant would do very well for you. Or if you have a really protected spot in zone 8, it would probably do fine. But it's not prickly like the leatherleaf, so that's what I really liked about it. Akuba, this is one of my favorite shade shrubs. It grows about 4 to 6 feet tall and wide. The tag says it will grow up to 10 feet, but I've had mine for 21 years and it's not that tall. They are very slow growing. I do absolutely nothing to this plant ever in 20 years. So I just sited it where it can grow tall. It's a background plant. I love the yellow speckles on it. It just brightens up a shady spot. There's also a solid green variety. It's a dwarf variety that only grows about 3 feet tall and gets these really pretty red berries on it, but just solid green. Japanese Aurelia or Fatsia. This is a really cool shrub as well. It gets big palm-like leaves on it. And then it gets these white blooms on it in the wintertime. And this one can sustain a little bit of freeze damage. I've had mine for 20 years, and maybe once every, I don't know, several years, I'll lose about a third of the plants, but it never completely dies. I just will lose a branch of it because of freeze, but I cut that off and it just grows back. So I would give that one a try. And then hydrangeas. Now, the endless summers, the lady in red, those are macrophylla, or big leaf hydrangeas. Now they can be a little thirsty. I call them water hogs. I have a client who calls them drama queens because they could be watered every day and still wilt. So, you don't want to plant your whole garden with hydrangeas because they're definitely not water conscious. But oak leaf hydrangeas, on the other hand, are completely different. I don't give them any extra supplemental water other than what I water my garden normally. I don't have to baby them. I transplanted one in May one time and it never even skipped a beat. So very tough, large hydrangea though as well. Oh, but only the oak leaf only has white blooms. But this is my favorite variety is Alice, and she will grow 8 feet tall and wide. So give her a big spot to grow. Beautiful blooms though, just beautiful. American beautyberry is another shrub for shade. There's also, it gets the purple berries on it in the fall, and there's also a white berry variety. You can just let this one grow naturally. I have a client who has one that's 8 feet tall and is absolutely gorgeous. I do trim mine back every February down to about 18 inches because I want to keep it in about the 4-foot range. So again, let it grow naturally or give it a chop in February. I'm not going to talk a lot about roses because all I want to talk about is keep your eye on rose rosette and get rid of those roses if you have them, and be looking for excessive thorns, very gnarly new red growth, and very malformed leaves on that. So you're going to have to dig those roses up, bag them up, and throw them in the trash because there is no cure. Laura, a couple shrubs I want to talk about that I'm using less and less, if at all, anymore. Loropetalum grows very, very large, but a couple problems I'm seeing with it. Stem canker or bacterial gall has been showing up in these last few years where we've had so much water. It comes on where the stem has been wounded, and that can be from pruning, that can be from hail, and critter chewing on it, and then that bacteria comes in and it looks like the stem kind of explodes with this black, and then that causes a dieback from that point out. So I'm tending not to use this shrub much, and it also can show iron chlorosis if you don't amend your soil to be a little more acidic. So I'm again tending not to use that shrub. If you do though, put it in a spot where it can grow very large, 6 feet minimum. And also Indian hawthorn, I'm using these less and less because of Entomosporium fungal leaf spot. It's the same fungal problem that photinias have. I don't recommend photinias. And again, I'm using these less and less. And I'm also finding that bagworms are loving Indian hawthorn. So any leaves that are left on, the bagworms come in and chew them off. So I don't know, that's 2 strikes against the shrub. So I'm very sporadically using them, let's say that. All right, ornamental grasses. Here's a little bonus topic. My favorite ornamental grass is adagio. It's a maiden grass, and it's a smaller grass, about 3 feet, 4 feet tall and wide. It plumes, or inflorescence is what the plumes are called, earlier than all of them, and they're starting to plume right now. And I love that grass. I love it swaying in the breeze, and it's even pretty in the wintertime when it takes on the winter color. There's just lots of color in that. And I do leave ornamental grasses through February, and then I cut them back at that time because I like that winter texture in my garden. This is pine muley. It gets the beautiful pink plumes on it in about November time frame. I wish it plumed earlier, but when it does, it's just glorious in the fall. Excuse me. My new favorite grass, though, is in the muley range is pine muley, not pink muley, but pine muley, because it's a nice small grass that grows about 2.5 feet tall, 3 feet wide. But what I like about it is it holds this erect form like that. It doesn't get floppy at all. And just when it's backlit by with the sun, it's just a gorgeous, gorgeous grass. I love the texture it adds. And this is Lindheimer's muley, which is a native. grass for our area, and it is much taller. It'll grow at least 4 feet, and as it plumes, it's going to push up to 5, possibly 6 feet tall. It can exist on rainwater alone. Very drought tolerant grass and quite large, but taller than it is wide. Mexican feathergrass is a little native grass for our area. It's very flowy. When the wind blows, you can see in that picture there, it's just laying over. So this one will rot if you give it too much water. So be sure to put this in a very dry area and even mulch it with gravel to keep it happier. And then vines. A couple vines I want to talk about. I mentioned this one last week when I was showing you the plant tag. This is a Tangerine Beauty crossvine. And I love this vine. It's an evergreen, and it's just very easily managed. It does look like a trumpet vine, but it is not a trumpet vine. I don't recommend trumpet vine. They are so invasive, and this one is not. So give this one a try. There's also a yellow blooming one. Cannot remember the variety name, but this one is Tangerine Beauty. Again, evergreen. And the other one is Carolina Jessamine. It blooms in March with these fragrant yellow blooms on it, and it too is evergreen. So, but it'll grow probably 20 feet. So, put it on a trellis that can handle it. So then ground covers. In this picture here, the back taller ground cover is a Plum yew. YEW, Cephalotaxis Harringtonia prostrata is the variety. So if you look for that one, it's an excellent shade. I should have put that in my shrub section, because that's a great shrub for shade as well. And it'll grow about 2 feet tall and 5 feet wide, but they've planted a bunch of them in here to form a ground cover. And then the next stairs down is Asian jasmine. So can't say I'm a huge fan of Asian jasmine, but I must say it's very pretty used in this application. And if you keep it well manicured, it is a good ground cover when under the shade of live oaks. And speaking of the size of live oaks, look at this thing. It's enormous. So site your live oaks where they can grow this beautiful, majestic size. All right, purple wintercreeper is a lot like Asian jasmine in its growth pattern, other than it turns purple in the winter, hence its name. So here's just a close-up of the leaves of that. This is a euonymus, so euonymus tend to get scale, so be on the lookout for that, and you may have to treat for that. And then pruning Asian jasmine and purple wintercreeper, if you will weed it down in February to about 3 or 4 inches, you cut off any of the old winter stubble, and then you'll get all new growth on it and keep it manicured looking that way. And then liriope, lots of varieties of liriope. Here I'm showing Big Blue, which is a solid green that spreads. So I use that as a ground cover. And then there's a variegated variety called Silvery Sunproof that doesn't spread. And there's a variety called Silver Dragon that is variegated that does spread. So be sure you get the kind that you want when you're looking at the variegated. And there is a super blue liriope that grows about 2 feet tall. So again, be sure you're getting the right kind of liriope depending on the application, whether it's Big Blue or Super Blue or the variegated. But regardless, cut them all down to about 2 inches in February, so you get rid of all the old growth that has any summer or winter damage on it, and that way you have all new growth. That's very pretty. All right, if you have a shady spot on a slope, I recommend mondo grass. You don't have to do anything to this, you just let it grow. This is the regular mondo that grows about 8 inches tall. There's a dwarf mondo that only grows 2 inches tall. That is great to use between flagstone. But it's very slow growing, and you'd spend a fortune trying to cover a slope with the dwarf. But the regular 8-inch mondo spreads very quickly, and within a year you can have your slope covered with that. Ajuga is a nice little shade ground cover, and there's several varieties of this. This one is Bronze Beauty. There's also Chocolate Chip that has a really small leaf. There's one called Caitlin's Giant that has a huge leaf to it, and there's a, I cannot remember the variety, but it's got more of a creamy colored variegated leaf to it. So look for those. Again, they need shade and good drainage. And then horse herb, if you have a dry shade area, and dry shade is one of the hardest areas to landscape, but horse herb will do fantastic in that application. It will grow about 1 foot tall. and then spread out as a ground cover. It is deciduous, so it will lose its leaves in the wintertime or die back to the ground in the wintertime, but then it comes back every spring and has these cute little yellow blooms on it. And then one more ground cover is called frog fruit, and it will grow maybe 6 inches tall, very short, and gets little white blooms on it. But this is a tough plant. It can handle sun or shade. And then again, I wanted to remind you of these resources that talk about all of the plants that I've talked about, plus many more. I mean, I've just scratched the surface on trees and shrubs and ground covers for our area and vines. So be sure to do a little more research on those and look at all of these books. I've mentioned those before. Steve Huddleston's book is excellent. Of course, Neil Sperry, we all know him. And then if you're interested in strictly natives, check out Sally Wazowski's book. And then Greg Grant has an excellent home landscaping book. And then if you want to learn more about trees and shrubs and vines, and if you will just Google tamu.edu with the name of the shrub that you're looking up, you'll get Texas A&M Aggie Hort information on that particular plant. And then also Texas Smartscape, Texas Superstar, Native Plant Society, and then Tarrant County Master Gardeners are a great resource for information. And then of course TRWD with SaveTarrantWater.com. So anyway, also I mentioned it last time, I have a Facebook and a blog. So if you have questions and you want to give me a shout out there or follow along, that would be great. And I think that's it. So Heather, I'll turn it back to you if there are any questions.
Hey, yes. Thank you so much, Tony. That was awesome. And we have tons of questions. So
okay.
I won't be able to get to all of them, but I'm going to go over some of the best ones. And then if we don't get to your question today, I've got everyone's email addresses. So I'll get back to everyone sometime next week or so with answers to your questions. Okay, so first question. Someone's looking for recommendations on a shrub as a privacy barrier and a backdrop to a native plant garden. So something that is maybe narrow and skinny, but tall and can provide privacy.
How tall? How tall? I
guess privacy maybe like 8 feet or so, right?
Right.
Like 8 feet, something.
Right. Well, you know, Nellie R is a great tall shrub, but it's fat. So if you're willing to do some pruning, that would work. You know, there's the tall Nandinas. Now I know that they have some controversy about those, but those grow tall and skinny. That's the problem, is tall and skinny. You get tall, but you get wide with it. So that's a difficult one.
It might be something that you have to kind of prune more to keep it skinny, right?
Right. Maintain with pruning, because any holly needlepoint would be great because it'll be about 8 feet, but you're going to have to prune it to keep it from being really wide.
Okay. All right. Someone else has a question about the growth rate of the yaupons, the dwarf yaupon hollies. Do they grow quickly, slowly? How slow?
I think within 3 years they're going to be mature growth. Okay. So that's what I plan on. And I plant, another tip on those, I plant those 45 inches on center because that's the length of my sharpshooter. So I put the center of the end of one of my sharpshooter shovel at the center of one plant and the end at the center of the next plant. And that's how I know that they're planted perfectly spaced for mature growth.
Okay, that's a great tip.
You don't have to drag out your measuring tape that way. You just use your sharpshooter shovel.
Right. Yeah. What a great tip.
Yeah.
Okay. Would you recommend the coral honeysuckle vine for a chain link fence?
Yes, that would be great. Coral honeysuckle is a great vine, and the hummingbirds love it. I don't recommend the what is it called? Is it Hall's honeysuckle? The
regular honeysuckle or whatever.
It's very invasive, but coral honeysuckle is great. I should add that to this program. Yes, that's a good one.
Okay, great.
Very well behaved.
Okay, someone is asking about planting blue grama grass and buffalo grass and how much is the risk of that creeping into garden beds?
don't know enough about either one to give you information on that other than native, but as far as spreading, I don't know. I have no experience with them, so I don't know.
Yeah, I can say a little bit about buffalo grass. I know that it will try to spread, of course, put like barriers. You talked about it in your last one. Make sure to bury your barriers underneath the ground so that things aren't creeping underneath the ground. I know that for me, I have the buffalo grass and it does creep a little bit into the beds, but I don't really have any trouble at all just coming through like every month or so and doing a little bit of weeding around the edges. And it's not like crazy enough to where it keeps persisting after that. So I think the buffalo grass is pretty good. The blue grama, I'm not really sure about.
So it doesn't sound as bad as Bermuda.
No, nothing is as bad as Bermuda, right?
Do you allow the buffalo to grow taller?
I like it to be tall because I like the nice like foot feel, I like a cushion to be there. But I do try to keep it still looking, nice and kept and everything because it can get a little bit tall and kind of wispy looking, I guess, right?
Okay.
Um, let's see. We've got someone asking about any container trees that you could put like on a patio or something.
Well, I know Japanese maples can be raised in containers. Wow. Possibly if you had a really large container and a very small holly, you could keep it in there for a while, but at some point, I think it would get too big and you would have to take it out and put it in the landscape. Trying to
All
think
right.
what else.
I know
That's
it's
all
kind of
that's
difficult
coming.
with woodies, right? Like containers are pretty small, and a lot of times woody plants
Right,
need definitely large
right.
area. Okay, let's see. Next question here is about the time, how and when is best to trim your Rose of Sharon. They said that theirs is tall and leaning. So what can you do to fix that?
You could do that at any time, but I would ideally you can prune those in February at that late winter pruning. And my little story on that is Jimmy Turner, we used to be with the Dallas Arboretum, and he said that he drove past this dwarf form of Rose of Sharon, and he just thought it was gorgeous. And so he stopped in and asked the homeowner, what variety of Althea or Rose of Sharon is that? And the guy said, oh, that thing over there, I take a chainsaw to it every year. So he would just chop it down. I mean, commit great murder on his Rose of Sharon just to keep it dwarf. And you can, because they don't have the pretty branching structure of a crepe myrtle. So you can chop away at them. Don't be afraid, because they will bush right back out. So just cut it wherever you need, and it will, to get it to straighten back up. And yeah, don't be afraid of that one.
Okay. All right, I think we're going to go with one more question. We've got quite a few people asking about how to remove vines that are not where you want them. Do you have any tips on removing vines that are continuing to grow that won't stop?
Well, if you can, like for instance, if it's trumpet vine or wisteria, where you've got a huge trunk, you can cut it off at the base. So you've got, that trunk could be, oh my goodness, a couple inches around. And if you could take a paintbrush and dip it in broadleaf weed killer, and the ingredient is 2,4-D. The D stands for a big old long word, and we just abbreviate it to 2,4-D. So you dip your little spongy paintbrush in that chemical full strength and just dab it on that fresh cut. It will take the killer to the root of that plant. So that way you're not spraying it all over the place. You're just putting it right on the source. And if you do it as soon as you cut it. Don't let that cut callus over. So go ahead and do that right away. So that's my tip on that.
And if they have kind of multiple areas where it's coming out from under the ground, you would recommend kind of cutting each of those areas and spot treating each of those areas?
Yes.
Okay.
Tedious, but and you can dig it, dig as much as you can first, so you don't have to use as much chemical. But yeah, those are some bad ones. I mean, they can spread 40 feet and come up in your neighbor's yard. I've seen it. Bad.
Yeah, yeah, I think that was some of the concern, some growing where they didn't want them to. And yeah, some of those invasive vines can be pretty
Mhm.
crazy, definitely. Okay, great. Well, I think that's all the questions we have time for right now. If we didn't get to your questions today, I will send you an email with some resources and everything. And then I just want to plug the our website once again. Thank you, Tony, of course, for
Thank
all
you.
of your information today. If you have not seen parts 1 or part 2, you can go to safetarrantwater.com and they're on there. This video will be on there in a few days. I'll upload it. So if you want to watch this again or anything like that, if you missed some information, you can totally go on there and do that. We've also got resources on there. You can ask us more in-depth questions if you have any general questions about water conservation or anything. And there's some more resources on there. So all those websites that Tony talked about are great for resources. And then we've got a list of resources also on safetarrantwater.com. So that about wraps it up, I guess, for us. Thank you so much, Tony. This has been a
All
3-part
right.
series about tough plants for North Texas landscapes. And we've heard about a bunch of great plants. And thank you so much for your expertise, Tony. And
Thanks for
thank you,
giving me the
everyone else.
opportunity.
Yeah, and thank you everyone
Thank
else
you.
for tuning in. And go ahead and go to safetarrantwater.com and watch the videos if you didn't catch any of the other ones. All right.
Okay. Thanks. Bye,
All right.
everybody.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.